Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Library of Congress National Book Festival. We're thrilled you're here at the Curiosity stage. I also want to welcome all of our viewers online and around the world. We're really glad you're with us here today, too. I'm Shari Werb. I'm the director of the Library of Congress's Center for Learning, Literacy, and Engagement. And you're here to be part of a great conversation featuring Elizabeth Acevedo and Jason Reynolds. But do it, come on. We're all feeling it, so that's awesome. But first, before we get into it, I just want to say, if you see a survey taker roaming around the festival, please take our survey. We're very interested in hearing from you and incorporating your thoughts into future National Book Festivals. We also hope that you'll join us at the library's Thomas Jefferson Building on Thursday nights for our popular Live at the Library series. Every Thursday night, we keep the Jefferson Building open late, and you can explore the library's exhibits, the architecture, grab something to eat and drink, and participate in a variety of fun events, including a literary costume ball on September 14th, when we encourage you to come dressed up as your favorite literary character or writer. Ann Patchett and Kate DiCamillo will be in conversation the night of October 19th, and a brand new event called Pick Your Poison, Mystery Night at the Library of Congress happens on October 26th. We hope to see you there. And we want to let you know that the Library of Congress belongs to you and is yours, and we want you to explore. But now, back to the reason you came here in the first place. National Poetry Slam champion Elizabeth Acevedo is a best-selling author. Of the novels in verse, The Poet X, which won the National Book Award, and Clap When You Land. She is also the author of the critically acclaimed novel, With the Fire on High, but she is here today for an exciting development in her career, which is her first novel for adults called Family Lore. Elizabeth is in conversation with Jason Reynolds. Who is named by the Library of Congress as the 2020 to 2022 National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. And, oh yeah, he's also #1 New York Times bestselling author, a Newbery Award honoree, a Prince Award honoree, a 2-time National Book Award finalist, and a Kirkus Prize winner, among many, 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 many other successes. We are thankful they're both here today, so now let's welcome them to the stage.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Everybody can hear us? Yes. Okay. Exactly. Thank you so much. I'm glad you can hear me. So it's good to see so many faces here to celebrate the great Elizabeth Acevedo. I think we don't have a lot of time, but I always try to make a point to say that I think, for me, when it comes to just respect, when it comes to the people that I look to push me, the people that I know are on the line, like really at the line. And for those of you who are writers, you know what I mean by that, like really like at the line with it. I don't know if there are many people in my generation of writers who are as talented or as intentional or as particular with language as Liz. And so I'm honored to be here to share this moment, this milestone with you as we push Family Lore out into the world.
Thank you.
Now, to get started, Liz insisted, I tried to talk her out of it. Liz insisted, I didn't try to talk her out of it. Liz insisted on doing a short reading so that we can kind of set the tone. For those of you who haven't read the book, you'll hear the energy, you'll hear the rhythm, the music, the voice, and then we'll get into some other things.
Word. Thank you so much, Jason. This is our first event together ever, despite being homies and living in DC and writing alongside each other now for
A long time.
a long time. And so I am honored to be on this stage and so thankful you agreed to ask me insightful questions. Now I'm putting pressure on. I'm going to read from this section. I will let you know this is an adult book. There is some language in this section, and so if you are a young person or with young people, we will unpack later. But for now, we're just going to be okay with the fact that this is an adult book, and you're going to hear the word shit a lot. This, to me, is one of the hearts of the novel in that it is thinking through how we practice love. And that is one of the central questions that I was trying to figure out when I sat down with this book. Helpful to know, Yadira, who is one of the 6 point of views, is someone whose childhood boyfriend was incarcerated when they were both 16. This section takes place in the past, where she has been sent to the Dominican Republic because she just could not function after he was incarcerated. And so she's living in the Dominican Republic in El Campo with her grandmother. Even the bathroom was of the old school variety, the kind used in rural townships and poor batalles, an outside toilet. It was clean, and at least it was an actual toilet instead of a latrine, but running water was shoddy in the country, and if the power grid was off, the ability to flush was off too. Despite all her children living in the United States and sending her money, Mama lived the way she had for the last 73 years. No one knew where she put the money, but it was certainly not into modernization. The first fight they had was about Yari's business in that bathroom. She stood with her body blocking the rickety dink door. Mama, por favor, you don't have to go in there. I promise I'm fine. Muévete. Yari shifted slightly, but didn't release the door handle. She just couldn't understand what words she needed to say in order to get Mama to leave her shit alone. It's fine. I feel fine now. I promise, she tried. It started the second day after she'd arrived. Something hadn't settled well, and she'd spent the night in the outside bathroom. Mama, convinced Yari's constitution was no longer resistant to parasites or tapeworms, had become hawk-eyed, following her outside every time she needed to piss or poop. Can I just describe it instead? A last-ditch attempt. Mama Silvia blinked at her, bewildered, as if trying to understand how a child of her blood could even considering offering not 1, not 2, but 3 whole comments in response to a direct command. Yari moved, and Mama Silvia went inside with her stick to poke at her shit. She came out a moment later, throwing the stick into the grass, muttering under her breath, and Yari knew that the entire day's menu and list of chores would now be navigated according to her morning excrement, her shit, the North Star of their days. If her poop was leaky, Mama made her go into town to buy a cut of fresh meat and chicken bones from the butcher. There would be bone broth for dinner. If her poop was bio-colored, Mama made her help shuck red beans for the evening meal. She added oregano to the girls' tea. Coal-colored, small, and hard was the worst verdict. That meant Yari would be spending the morning in the conuco, pulling up yuca, batata, and chayote. At midday, she'd need to grab the bucket and walk to the river to collect the yautía coquito that grew at the water's edge. It also meant she'd be spending her afternoon in the kitchen, peeling, cutting, stirring the sancocho made from all those ingredients that Mama insisted would provide the fiber, nutrients, artillery her gut needed. By August, Yari held the door open proudly, peering in with Mama to look at the toilet bowl. Muy bien, pero requete bien, Mama said. Yari nodded. The brown poo was gorgeous, full of healthy stomach bile, the perfect balance of fiber and iron and magnesium, the sturdy stuff that kept it together. And more importantly, it'd been that way for weeks now. Whatever illness had been running through her system exercised. This is how you heal, Niña. You are thoughtful about what you offer yourself. You study what you put out. In the end, Yari didn't stay through the summer. She stayed through the summer and her senior year. Yari told me this poop story years ago, and we didn't discuss it because at that point there was no going back. She'd made her decision on how to move forward. But I think we both wondered whether, in her own way, Mama Silvia had been trying to teach Yari something that wouldn't be examined in a classroom with a proctor, but would be tested again and again, poked at with a stick, perhaps trying to say, this is loving, this is loving, this is loving the shit you're willing to wade through.
You know, none of y'all thought y'all was gonna come in here and hear about intestinal health. Make sure all of y'all are looking in your toilets. We need to be better about talking about these things.
Listen, the
It's
gut
important.
and stress is
Listen,
all related.
look in the toilet, all right? Make adjustments based on the color. This is a real thing. I wish I were joking. My first question, and I have a lot and no time, but I'll ask you later. But we are, you are a language person.
Yeah.
And language people know that language is a living thing.
Right.
And because it is a living thing, that means that language is a changing thing. My first question, thinking about that in context to the story, in context to your life, what to you are the definitions of family and the definitions of law?
Of loyal?
Of lore.
Lord.
What's your definition of law and your definition of family in context to the story and in context to your life? You said you wanted me to, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Did I say that? Did I? Like 2 seconds ago, I did say that. Dang. I like to think of family as the kinship, whether of blood or not blood, that allows us to feel known, that gives us a place to rest, that makes a constellation of people that we can come home to. I love that, speaking of language, in Spanish we have, you know, so many words that kind of sit in the middle of, like, you know, auntie, sister, or, you know, like words like criado, which means to be raised. That's when someone is of the family, but they are maybe not biologically, but you were raised here. El criado de nosotros, right? We have that primo hermano. He's a cousin friend, or he's a cousin brother, right? He lives with us. He is of the brother lineage, but he's, right, that we have that. I think language in Spanish and in many different languages give us familial terms we may not always know. And I think we're seeing how familial terms are constantly being remade, right? Nibbling as a word, right? Or I love, you know, the ways that language is trying to become more encompassing. I think it's a reflection of the times and of how we grow. But that's, for me, is family, right? It's the constellation of people who love us and who allow us to feel seen and like we see them. Lore is a little bit looser. Right? And I think I would probably go by the traditional definition of lore, a little bit of myth, a little bit of what we make up, what we cobble together from hearsay and gossip. But in context of this book, I think it is also the ways that we have to write into silence. That lore says, I know this, and I know this, and my mama ain't tell me what happened in between. And so I have to imagine and create a bridge there. And I think for folks who may not have, who are at a loss as to our ancestral lineages, if we've lost generations of people, and so there's only so much lore we have, and it only goes back maybe 1 or 2 generations, I think it is our work to put language to what may have been. I think it is to say, I'm gonna sit quietly today and call on my ancestors and see if I can write backwards, right? That for me, writing isn't just for the next generation, it is also a project of how am I rethinking who might have been? How do I try to be quiet and pay attention to who I'm from, whose story I don't know? Is there a way that maybe they're here and they're telling me, and so I'm writing in both directions? And I think lore is at play there. It is, maybe my auntie sat with me right after I did some prayer, and maybe she didn't, but I have to believe she did. And that's the lore. I have to believe that it is not me writing by myself, that they are with me, and I am telling stories, not just my own, but of a community of people who couldn't write, whose names aren't known, who were disappeared, and yet are still worthy to be remembered.
Do all of y'all know what this book is about?
We should have started there, right?
Well, it's fine. This is a smart crowd, you know what I mean? We'll give a little context. I realized what you were talking about. I was like, we should give a little context so you all know. These sorts of events are always tricky because it's really easy to give everything away. And I'm gonna do my best to steer us away from giving too much away.
Okay.
But I think we do need a little context. So if you
That's
had to
fair.
give your pitch, give your elevator.
My elevator pitch was terrible. Shout out to my editor who saw
Yo,
it
are
like
you
outside
bad
of
at
my
this?
pitch.
I'm terrible.
I have one book I knew how to pitch, and that was Clap When You Land, because it's kind of simple, right? A plane crashes, two girls find out their daddy was their daddy, right? That's straightforward. All my other books are like a lot of women with feelings. that's the pitch.
I'm always
but
like-
these feelings are in verse, and these feelings are in
Exactly.
prose.
Give me like 25 minutes for me to pitch this book to you. Right?
But I have worked on family lore, so maybe I can get it.
Let's do it.
Okay. Family Lore is a novel told through the perspective of this one family's women, one of whom has decided to throw herself a living wake. And the book takes place the 3 days before that wake happens. And you are following each of the women as they process in the current day the fact that this woman is potentially going to die. They're not sure. It does help to know that Flord can tell what's going to happen, who's going to die by her dreams. So they're kind of sure, but they're not sure. And you're also in the past a lot. It is a back and forth book as they try to process all of the moments that they have had to mourn other parts of themselves in preparation for mourning their sister.
Now the book is set up with all these voices. There are lots of characters. Everyone's sort of fleshed out and well-rounded and has whole stories, and there's a lot happening. The interconnectedness, I think, is genius. My question is simply, what is the initial, what's the nugget? I know you're writing very, very well. I know it's a character. I know you started with a person because I know you're writing very well. If I'm wrong, I'm so interested to hear you say this. But I've read everything 10,000 times. And I'm like, I just know Liz starts with I know there's a person who shows up. I know there's a person.
Yeah, no, I'm completely character driven. Don't come here for plot. It ends up happening, but it's mysterious even to me. I want to know people. I want to know the texture of what makes us stop. And I think that's the poet, right? The poet isn't as concerned with the narrative.
Right.
And even the punchline, the poet loves the punchline, but that's not the point. The poet wants to know, what is it about the human experience that stopped me or sparked me, and how do I put language to that? Mm-hmm. And so the impetus for me is still the same, even with a novel. There's the character of Matilde, and thinking about maybe someone who's really sheltered and has fallen in love and is processing, what does it mean 50 years into a marriage? Is this still my place? Should I still stay here, right? And that question of writing a woman who is in her older years, who is wondering whether or not it is worth it to leave a relationship. It felt close to the women in my family who, for religion, for wanting to save face, make choices that I, in my current day, I'm like, but bruh, just go. Like, we love you. Like the family party's still gonna happen. Like, you're good, but there's something holding them back. And so it was this moment of, what am I not seeing, right? As someone who is a younger generation, why can't I empathize here? What's at play? And what isn't this person in my family seeing? And so it started with wanting to understand that, and then I kind of populated the world around it. But you're absolutely right. This book had some things at play, particularly with Ona, who's our narrator. But it was Matilde who anchored the book in terms of, oh, here's what's going to happen with time and pace.
It almost feels like, and I can't wait for the rest of you to read, by the way, Manuelito.
Yeah.
This is the worst human being I've ever, this might be the worst person.
Dang.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
Dang.
I mean, he's well written, it's visceral. You know?
Yeah, he's a mess. Rafa, yeah.
He's wild.
He's a wild boy, right?
This is the husband we speak of.
Yeah.
But speaking of sort of starting with the person and then building out, I think my next question, and what I thought was so beautiful and so interesting, is that this feels to me like a character study. Much of it, right? Yes, there is a story. Yes, there is a story arc. Yes, you will be going on a on a journey of sorts, right? But it feels like an examination of a family through sort of individual relationships and through magic. And there's in the kid lit space they talk about like third spaces, right? It's like, oh, you write about there's like school and there's home, and then you write like about the third space, right?
The poetry club,
Right. Like,
the library,
the basketball court,
yeah,
whatever
right,
the third
right.
space is. And I think for this, it seems like there's like DR, and then there's like the U.S., and then there's like their space.
Yeah.
There's like their world, right?
Yeah.
The world of this family. And so I guess I just want you to talk a bit about the building of the third space, of their third space, and sort of what it took to carve out such human beings, all standing so strongly, so firmly in their own identity on the page, which is very hard to do.
Yeah,
And so
it's a lot of perspectives. And it was easy for them to get muddled, right? I had to trust that there would be clarity through just following each person. The magic helped. So each one of the women has their own magical abilities, right? One can tell when you're gonna die through her dreams. One of them can tell if you're telling the truth. This is before Encanto or Poker Face, so like, we were just all on the same wavelength, but I didn't copy anybody. But so giving everyone their own magical ability grounded me in how would you walk through the world if every time someone spoke, you could tell they were lying? You'd probably be really jaded because people lie all of the time, right? So Pastora, like she is known from, her first description is she has never known silk, right? Her tongue has never known silk because she just is gonna tell you how it is because she don't have time for those games. You're gonna lie to her anyways, right? So then I know that about her. Like she is the kind of woman that doesn't have time for a lot of people. She sticks with her family. Most folks are afraid of her because she can just tell you very easily. So I was able to figure it out through this inheritance of, I think, people expect anyone of Latin American diasporic tendencies to write magical realism. And so how do I play within that space but flip it, make it feel New York, make it feel hip hop? And so then we have Ona, who has an alpha vagina. We have Yadi, who has an inheritance of Lyme. So they all have these random abilities that they never used for profit, but gave me a way into knowing them, right? And that was really helpful. I think the structure also helped. It gave me a lot of permission. This is also a book about oral storytelling. It is literally trying to chronicle, for those of us who don't have a crest, right? The family Bible names, like we don't got that. I read about that in romance novels, so I know they exist, right? I be reading my historicals. But for those of us who don't have that, we learn of our family through talking. And so when you got Tia so-and-so telling you a story, and then you got your mom telling you a story, and you're like, this is not the same story, where y'all both there. How do we write that? And how do characters reveal themselves based off of what they say, what they contradict, how they pull back? There's literally a character that can't utter one of their family members' names. What does it mean for her? What was that relationship? And how do I let the way the story is told do the work of letting a reader know, oh, there's restraint here because there's trauma here. Oh, as women, actually, it's really difficult to talk about X, Y, Z. It's why we see the older generation can't answer that question, can't tell that story, because they're still holding on to something they've been taught to silence, right? And so I think a lot of characters are revealed by other characters, but they're also revealed by the astute reader knowing like, oh, here's where we're seeing the pulling back or the revelations happen in the body. Which to me is really important, right? So if you have an aunt who's always doing this, you're like, dang, ella está nerviosa, right? Like she's nervous out here, right? If you have someone else who is really stoic and speaks in, parables. Wow, my Spanish just be sneaking in. That has its own thing. And so I think for me, it was finding different moments to ground them, but then letting craft, right? The structure of how it's written reveal what readers needed to know about the characters.
In terms of structure and form, was this at any point a collection of short stories? I'm just thinking like my instinct. So I'm like this. I'm reading the book. I'm like she getting busy.
And
I need to see some other drafts. Was this ever a collection of short stories?
Only in my head.
Okay.
But initially, so I went to visit my aunt in 2009 in the Bronx. I was still in school here. I went to GW, and I'm there for winter break. And she's a tigera, right? Like, this is the aunt who has several businesses. She got a cafeteria. She's always like, what we doing in DC? What we gonna buy up? How we gonna build something? I'm like, girl, I ain't no business person. I'm not buying up nothing, right? But she should be on Shark Tank selling something, right? And I love her energy to come to this country at the age she came and be like, what can I make? How can I make something? How can I lean into whatever's at play? That's a particular energy that no one else in my family has. And so it's like, what shaped you that you launch yourself like this, right? I'm like, she's the main character of somebody's book. My mom is one of 15, one of 9 sisters. And initially, back then in 2009, I had never written prose, and I said, one day I'm gonna write a short story collection. Each story will be based on one of the 9 women, right? Flash forward to 2019, I'm thinking of what my next project will be, my next book, and I had that kernel of, I've always wanted to write about these women and the things I've heard, the lore I've heard, and like, how can there's texture there, how can I fictionalize that? And I had to whittle it down and narrow it down and then just make a lot up because I didn't want it to be too close. But I think when folks feel like that section that I just read maybe is self-contained, it is because a little bit of it was wanting each woman's story to feel like its own thing.
Absolutely.
Its own gem, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask a slightly personal question that you can, of course, say, nah, Jay.
In front of all of these
Yeah,
folks.
yeah.
Nah, Jay, we cool.
I mean, you writing this book, which, would you say this was the heaviest lift thus far in terms of your career and your writing?
It's my most ambitious novel.
Would you say how close would you say it is to life, to like your life? I know it's taken from these.
Yeah, no, enough that I'm really nervous about the Spanish edition, which comes out in November.
That's real.
Right?
That's real.
It's close enough that I'm like, dang, some folks gonna be calling me.
This is gonna be real.
Yeah.
What? So then my question, my tiny bit of personal question is, while this is happening, you are growing a child. At the time, you were pregnant in the midst of making the book.
Yeah.
Which means this family that has been fictionalized is growing and changing.
Right.
The language of the family is growing and changing. Does any of this play into, maybe not in the writing per se, but in the experience of making a thing, knowing that you're making a thing, a person, making someone, right?
I think.
Say nah, Jay.
No. It's a tough question because it's kind of like when folks ask me, like, what does it feel like to be a Latina writer? And I'm like, I ain't never not been in one, so I don't know, right? Like, but I guess this is different in that I've written a book not pregnant. This book took several years, right? I sold it December of 2020. And I had found out I had this large fibroid that had to get removed, that was removed, and then I am struggling with the aftermath. I was told in 3 weeks you're gonna be good, you're gonna be walking around. It did not feel that way, it was not that. It was really difficult for me. We were trying to conceive, that took the time and the process that it took and was emotionally difficult. And I'm writing this book about these women who have all of these things at play, right? That I had not anticipated I would have to be struggling with, because when I started this book, I did not know, right, what would be coming true for me. So I'm writing about infertility in the book, and then I'm like, oh snap, like this is fun, right? Like to be looking at this in the face. So the book was interesting in that it challenged me to have to grapple with how much of what is happening do I let in? How much of what is happening is going to automatically be in here because we can only separate so much of ourselves from what we make? And how much of it is an offering to the world that these are my actual thoughts. This is actually what I'm struggling with. And yes, I will give it to this character and let her make something else of it. Can something be made of those hard days, of those difficult days, of the not knowing days that will shed a little light for my past me, but also for anyone who is in this same place? the baby was fascinating because it was the first time that a very solitary experience of writing was not solitary, right? Like, he was hungry. I knew, like, all right, I was supposed to write for 4 hours, and now I'm not, right? Because I got to go feed my baby. I was supposed to be doing this, but I need a nap. And so it was the first time, or I'd be writing, and I'm hyped, and the baby start kicking. I'm like, yeah, baby, we out here. Like, that's a dope scene, right? So it was this moment where I was so aware of my body throughout the entire writing. And I think the book being very corporal, every character is highly aware of their body, even if what they're aware of is, I was taught not to be aware of my body, right? And so I think it was because the vessel had so much happening, that the mind and the heart were still thinking of when we conceived the story, but I could not respond to what was happening.
There's a whole other spirit in there.
There was a whole other spirit in there, and I became so many different versions of me in the years it took to make this book.
All right, we have 13 minutes. So if you have that, I know, blame it on the people who organize these things. If you have questions, please make your way to the microphone. We're gonna try to get as many as we can before getting up out of here. If you have questions for Liz, please make it a question. And if you got a comment, tell her afterward. We don't have that much time for you to be gushing. All right, you ready? Come on. Yeah.
Hi.
So Dominican spirituality, right, specifically that crossroads of Catholicism with African and indigenous spirituality is a big factor in a lot of your books. And so my question is, how do you tune into that spirituality, that very specific Dominican spirituality into your writing?
I try to think a lot about where's the third space like we were talking about. It's curious to me that the Dominican Republic is one of the only flags that has a cross on it, right? And has a Bible on it. So it's an extremely Catholic nation, but also we're the kind of folks that like, oh, what did you dream last night? Oh, what numbers I got to play based off of your dreams? We play the lottery, right? Like, we also are incredibly superstitious in a way that if you're very strict, right, you wouldn't do, but we have a looseness that we allow even within religion and within faith. And so it's taken a lot of research, honestly, and a lot of learning of the African parts of, the traditional religions that were syncretized, and kind of trying to find where is this in the Catholicism we know, but also where did I not learn enough? And I need to learn more, and then my characters learn more because of what I have gone through, and hopefully it resonates with people who did know that. But I've had to work really hard at figuring out what worked for me because it wasn't what I was raised with. And so I think folks are seeing the evolution from all of the books of my thinking around worship and faith and belief, and kind of trying to figure out what it means to believe in something bigger, but trying to find a precise name or process that doesn't match what I knew.
Young lady.
Hi.
So I just wanted to start by saying I love your books.
Thank you.
But I also really wanted to know what inspired Poet X, because that's one of my favorite books of all time.
That's amazing. Do you write?
Not really.
Okay. Do you secretly write? No, okay. Poet X is, I did slam poetry when I was growing up. Hey! And I also was a coach for slam poets here in DC. And so I think I just always loved how, even if you're afraid of your body, you're afraid of speaking out loud, maybe you're shyer, something about a poetry slam says, for these 3 minutes, you own this space. And it is yours, and your body is yours, and your voice is yours. And we're just gonna listen and watch. And I wanted to capture that in a character who was taught to be afraid of her body, afraid of her voice, and had to really lean into, but I have this thing inside of me that I need to get out. And how does a character like that learn to trust themselves? And, Xiomara to me, you've read the book, means one who is ready for war. And like, what does it mean to have this intensity, right? I can fight anything off, but I'm not gonna learn to do it with my fist or with a sword. I'm gonna learn how to do it with my voice. And so she kind of wrote herself. But I'm so glad that that book connected with you. Thank you.
Ooh, I'm a little nervous. I'm starstruck. Oh. I know, right?
Can't with y'all.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Thank you so much for writing family lore. As you mentioned earlier in this conversation, some of us didn't get to grow up with knowing too much of our family history because sometimes when we ask questions, we're met with some silence. And like you said, there's more to unpack there. But your novel really inspired me to try to delve into my own family lore and see what is there for me to discover and feel. There's a lot of emotions in your book, and I have always enjoyed them. So my question is, do you have any advice for, digging into that lore and those feelings and emotions?
Yeah. I think for digging into the lore, there are ways that when we're talking to family members, we got to come sideways. Like there are things my mom won't say, but if I ask my aunt, there's more distance there, right? So she'll say. And then I can ask about my mom, right? And she'll say there.
And she's like, no, eso no fue así.
Right.
And then they'll come in.
That's not how it happened, right? And so I'm able to be like, Tia so-and-so told me that, like, is this how you remember it? So then I'm entering that way. But I think so much of learning our family stories is about trust. That I think sometimes our families don't trust that what we're going to do with it will be thoughtful or respectful, or that we'll hold it in a way. I think there's a lot of shame that people don't want to look at, and so just creating a space of, I'm not judging your past you. I just want to know who we are and how you're here, right? And I'm so thankful you're here. It was interesting to ask my mother, she was the only person I actively interviewed, ask her questions, and I think there were things she was afraid to say, but what came up in me wasn't like judgment, it was, I so wish I could mother the younger you. Yes. I so wish I could hold your little self. Right, but she was saying it as like, oh, I'm so regretful I'm even thinking this. And so I think creating that trust of, I'm coming to you lovingly because I want to know you, right? I want to see you fully, not just as this one-dimensional figure. And so figuring that out, but it took a lot of me also being really vulnerable. And like, there are things I've withheld because I'm afraid of your judgment. Can I share that with you? And so I think the more that I expose that, on the imaginative side, I think simple prayers, like, even before I began ancestor worship on a more thoughtful capacity, I would go backstage before an event and be really nervous and just like, I hope my ancestors are in this room with me. And then I would go down stage, and I didn't have a ritual or routine. I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm like, if anybody's gonna be in this space, right, it's gonna be whoever I'm carrying with me. And I hope that they are here sitting in the front row and like watching me do this thing. And so figuring out ways to invite folks in and whatever spirits, like, Lucille Clifton is not a direct ancestor of mine, right? But I say her poems before every day. Like, it's a part of my prayer process. I say her Blessing of the Boats poem. And so I call on her, like, if you are a guide that guides other people other than your own blood, like, girl, I love you. I loved you when you were here. I love your poetry. Like, please bless this work. And so invite people in.
Gracias.
That was a long answer. I'm sorry, y'all. We only got 2 more. I'm going to be quick.
Also a really big fan. All of your books center around young female protagonists that are typically marginalized. So I guess my question to you is, the journey you take them on, the emphasis, how do you connect them with the reader? How do you allow them to really, no matter who's reading it, they're like, okay, this isn't my particular experience, but hey, I can understand.
Yeah. I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings, right? I don't really think of y'all. Not when I'm writing. There's no space. Like, I got me and I got my characters, and I got to tune everybody else out, because audience is tricky. And if you're trying to appease blanket audiences, or, oh, this is going to really connect, like, that's not going to be the thing. I just do my best to, how do I get to know this character? And what are the choices they would or wouldn't make? And I don't try to think of, well, is it satisfying to the reader that this is how, XYZ happens? I was just doing an event last week, and this teacher came up to me. Sorry, spoiler if you haven't read The Poet X, right? And she's like, the people in my classroom don't like that she gets back with Amon. And I'm like, bet, that's good for them, like that they don't like that. You know, but this is a character that is also learning about forgiveness and grace. And so she makes room for who this boy needs to become and what he has not learned how to do yet. So I think you just sit with your character, you get to know your character, and then you follow the choices they would make. And that specificity is what actually connects on a more universal level. And the more you try to manipulate for connection, the more contrived it's gonna feel, the more it's gonna feel like you have a paper doll versus I'm just observing and following this character that surprises me. And when your character surprises you, you know you're on the right track, and it's gonna be connecting with other people because they've taken on a life of their own, and you're just sitting with them through those choices. So I'm not an over manipulative writer. Maybe there's someone else who would give you a different answer, but I think the connection comes from just really looking at what makes humans humans and then trusting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I also really liked the Poet X. I
Awesome.
really thought that character was powerful and like really came into her own. I haven't read Family Lore yet. Is there anything from the Poet X that influenced Family Lore?
I think of all my books, those two are the most in conversation. Family Lore is older. Astute readers will see that there's a character from Poet X that is in Family Lore. So you get slight insights. If you're curious about Caridad, she may or may not be someone I carried into this book for a very short section. But it's a book about family in the way that the Poet X is about family. It's a book about womanhood and owning your own womanhood. And it is a book about what do we say, right? And I think more than Imani or Yahaira or Camino, those two characters are the most that are grappling. I'm saying this book, Family Lore, those characters, and Xiomara grappling with silence and using our voice. And Family Lore is the project of storytelling as a way of healing and of knowing. And so, yes, but I will go back to what Jason said. This book stretched me more than any other book. It is ambitious on another level. There's a way in which I was trying to outwrite anything I've ever known how to make. And so it is not going to feel comfortable for a lot of readers. It's not in verse. And it's not as, I'm always tender, but it's maybe, in Family Lore, it's a tenderness that is also trying to figure out what's true. And so I think you'll like it. But I hope that you come to it and see what stretched there and what didn't. And also, yeah, I just want to thank you all for coming on the journey with me of all of my stories.
For sure. I have a question real quick as we go. My last question as we go is, how much do you hate when people say the DR? I've always wanted to ask you this. We could talk about it later, but I just always wanted to know, is that a problem for you?
The DR is
The
better
DR.
than the Dominican. The Dominican, I'm like, oh no, that hurt me. Don't say the Dominican, folks, right? The Dominican Republic, Santo Domingo.
And for those of
even
you who
the
don't know
DR,
what
I'll
we're talking
accept.
about, it's because you probably say the DR. Y'all have a good one. Give it up for the genius, Liz Acevedo.
Thank you for letting me use your copy. Thank you.